Hello, let's discuss a very important chapter from UPSC perspective. The chapter name is External Sector. Sometimes it is also referred as Balance of Payments or BoP chapter. Chapter name BoP, also called as Balance of Payments. This chapter, it's very important from prelims perspective. It gives 3 to 4 questions every year in the prelims exam. Yes, for the year 25-26, for the year 2025-2024, there has been no question in the prelims, but starting from 2012 to 2023, it has given around 3 to 4 questions every year. So if the question hasn't been asked in the last 2-3 years, that doesn't mean the chapter has lost its importance, right? For mains, no question comes no question has come in the mains exam in the last 10 years. So this chapter is very important from prelims perspective. What exactly is balance of payments? Now, balance of payment, it is an annual financial statement. Annual financial statement. It gives a record of all financial transactions between residents of a country and non-residents. What does this financial statement tell? Suppose this is India. Okay. So we can have Indian government, we can have Indian corporate, TCS, we can have an Indian individual, say me, right? We can have US government, we can have a US bank, say BoFA, Bank of America, and we can have a foreigner, say Tom Cruise. Now, if there is any transaction which takes place across this border, if there is any financial transaction which takes place across this border, then that transaction is part of balance of payments. So what exactly is balance of payment? It is a record of financial transactions, hence it is an annual financial statement. It is that record, and what record? It keeps a record of all transactions made across this border. Now, if Indian government is taking a loan from US government, one government taking a loan from another government, it is called as bilateral loan. Okay? Bilateral. Bi means between two countries, hence bilateral loan. It's also possible India takes a loan from World Bank. World Bank, a multilateral organization. Multilateral organization means this organization would have multiple countries as its members, hence multilateral organization, multiple countries as its members. Suppose Indian government takes a loan from World Bank also. That would be called a multilateral loan, right? Suppose we have an Indian bank also, FPI. Indian corporate takes a loan from US bank. That is called ECB, external commercial borrowings. So when an Indian corporate borrows from outside India, it is called external commercial borrowings. Earlier, this borrowing should have been in dollar to be considered a part of ECB. But now this borrowing can be in case of rupees, can be in terms of dollars, and it would be called external commercial borrowings, right? Tom Cruise, he sends some amount to me every month, say $100. This is called remittance. This would be as such called as external remittance. Why would it be called as external remittance? Because remittance, it just means transfer of money. So even when the parents of the students, when they send them money, that would also be called as remittance, but that would be called as internal remittance. But if I'm getting a remittance from outside the country into my country, that would be called as external remittance. All right. Now, it's quite possible Indian government borrows from Indian bank. Indian government can borrow from Indian bank. Indian government can borrow from foreign bank. Indian corporate can also borrow from Indian bank. All right. And the question for you guys, the question for the students is, I'll be asking you that out of these transactions, which one is part of balance of payment, which one is not part of balance of payments. Now, if Indian government is borrowing from US government, is this transaction part of budget? I'm asking budget. Yes, this is part of budget. Reason, government is a participant. So it gives a further clarity on one more concept, but that is what exactly is a part of budget. So if there is any government transaction that would be a part of budget, so Indian government borrowing from US government, it is part of budget, but Indian government borrowing from US government, is it part of BoP? Yes, it is part of BoP because the transaction is happening across this border. It is part of BoP also. Same goes with Indian government borrowing from World Bank. Even this is part of budget and this is part of BoP. Indian government borrowing from Indian bank, this transaction. Is this transaction part of budget? Yes, this transaction is part of budget. Reason being, government is a participant. Is this transaction part of BoP? No, this transaction is not part of BoP. Reason being, the transaction is not happening across the border. Indian corporate borrowing from a bank outside India. Is this transaction part of budget? This transaction is not part of budget. Reason being, government is not a participant. But is this transaction part of BoP? Yes, this transaction is part of BoP. The transaction is happening across the border. This one, Indian corporate borrowing from an Indian bank. This transaction, is it part of budget? It's not part of budget because government is not a participant. Is it part of BoP? It's not a part of BoP because the transaction is not happening across the border. External remittances. Is the government a participant? Government is not a participant, hence not part of budget. Is it part of BoP? Yes, part of BoP because transaction happening across the border. So I hope that you have understood what exactly is BoP. Record of financial transactions. Now this record of financial transactions, it is maintained by the central bank of that country. So as for every country there will be balance of payments, and for every country the central bank of that country would maintain the record of those transactions. The central bank would maintain the BoP of every country. In India's case, this record is maintained by the RBI. Alright, now when we discuss about budget, we know in budget the government's transactions are classified into two different accounts. One is revenue account, other is capital account. Right? Similarly, for balance of payments, for BoP, there are two accounts. One is a current account, other is capital account. Now this current account, it consists of balance of visibles or balance of it consists of, it will be better if I do it like this. It consists of balance of visibles or tangibles and other is it consists of balance of invisibles or intangibles. Now this visibles, it consists of balance of trade, or I can say goods. So when I talk about balance of trade, I would only talk about goods. I will not talk about services because services would be covered here in intangibles. So when I say balance of trade, goods, so what do we India trade? So when we trade, it means there would be exports and there would be imports too, right? What do we export? We export petroleum products. Look, it's not me, we do import. We import crude oil, but we are very good in refineries. So we import crude oil, but we export petroleum products. Rather, for many years, petroleum products are the highest exports of India. All right. So it is petroleum products. It is pharmaceuticals. It is agricultural commodities. It is industrial commodities, leather goods, textiles. These are some largest exports of India. And what do we import? We import crude oil, edible oil, the refined oil which we have. We import 50% of our domestic consumption through imports. We import 50% of our domestic consumption of edible oil. All right. It's the second largest import after crude oil, much more than the value of gold we import. To reduce India's import bill, you can help by consuming less of gold, but you can also help by consuming less of puris, right? That is on a lighter side, right? And electronic goods, right? Then when I talk about balance of invisibles, intangibles, it consists of, first is it consists of services. It consists of income and transfers. Income, when I talk about income, it consists of profit, dividend and interest. Transfers consist of remittances, gifts, donations. Then these two. This balance of trade and services. This, right? This is together called as balance of trade and services. ठीक? Then this is about the current account. Now, if I talk about capital account, it consists of three subheadings. First is NRI deposits. I'll explain all these things one by one. I'm just writing it now, down right as of now. NRI deposits. Second is loans, which consist of two type of loans. One is sovereign loans. Sovereign loans means taken by the government. Other is ECB, loans taken by corporates. Explained you earlier what is ECB. And then last is foreign investments. Foreign investments consist of two: foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. The foreign portfolio investment consists of two subheadings, which is QFI, that is qualified foreign investment, and FII, foreign institutional investment. So this is the diagram. This is the diagram for balance of payments. Now, you guys must be having Truecaller, right? So whenever there is income received in your account, it would show a positive. And whenever there is an expenditure from your account, it would show minus, right? Similarly, whenever there is inflow of dollars, inflow of dollars would always be considered as positive. And whenever there is outflow of dollars, it is always considered as negative. So when would there be inflow of dollars? Whenever we export goods, in that case there is inflow of dollars. So export of goods would be considered as positive, because when we export, it would lead to inflow of foreign currency in India, and hence it would be considered as positive. Outflow would happen when there is import of goods. Inflow of dollars would also happen when there is inflow of foreign investments. And whenever there is outflow of foreign investment, it would be considered as negative. All right. Okay. Now, let's come back to this. So I'm shooting this on an iPhone, so I'm just regularly checking whether it's getting recorded or not. All right. So that's the reason there is some break of 10 seconds like that. Anyways, let's continue. So current account, let's discuss all of them one by one. Now, so whenever we export, right, this leads to inflow of dollars. So this would be positive. Imports leads to outflow of dollars. this would be negative. Question for you guys is, what about balance of trade? Will it be positive or negative? Means, do we import of higher amount or we export of a higher amount? Right? Now, we import of a higher amount as compared to exports. Hence, balance of trade for India's case is negative. Alright. Then, what about services? We export services. Services means IT, BPO, tourism. Alright, that is services. So we export services, hence services for India's case is positive. Okay. What about balance of trade and services? Whether this negative is more than this positive or this positive is more than this negative? Yes. Tell me. For India's case, the balance of trade is more negative than the positive of services. Hence, this is negative for India. Alright. In invisibles, we have income, we have transfers. In transfers, what about remittances? Do we get more remittances? Like we have Indians who are staying in Gulf countries, who are staying in European countries, staying in US. We also have foreigners staying in India, Nepalis, Burmese, they stay in India. Who sends more amount? Indians staying abroad, they send more amount to India, or foreigners staying in India, they send more amount back to their place. Yes, for India's case, remittance is positive because there is more inflow of foreign remittance. Same goes with gifts, same goes with donations. Indian NGOs get donations from outside, Indians get gifts from outside, and transfers for India's case is positive. Right? To understand the income part, you will have to understand the capital account. So, capital account. First is NRI deposits. Look, recently I was having a phone call with one of my friends who is in Canada, and he said that people in Canada, they are protesting. Why are they protesting? He said the interest rates on home loans have increased. I asked him, हाँ भाई कितना interest rate? What's the interest rate? He said the interest rate is 2%. At 2% people are protesting. हमारे यहाँ पर क्या interest rate है? 9% is considered as normal interest rate in case of home loan. So if the bank, say a Bank of Canada, suppose a Bank of Canada is lending at 2%, obviously it will be borrowing from people at 1%. Indian Bank, SPI, it is giving a loan at 9% because it has a FD interest rate of 7%. You understand my point? If the banks do not even give a 7% interest rate, people will not deposit money in the bank because inflation is around 5%. So by keeping money in the bank, people are at least getting a benefit of 2%. Right? That's a discussion of some other day. But point is, Indian banks are borrowing at 7% because Indian banks are offering a higher interest rate because Indian banks are a method to mobilize domestic savings. Indian bank is lending at 9%, therefore Indian bank is borrowing at 7%, therefore it has to lend at 9%. Foreign banks are borrowing at 1%, therefore they can lend at 2%. If you are an NRI, you are Indian, so you have a habit of savings. You save. Where would you save? One option is you deposit money in Bank of Canada. The bank gives you 1% interest. What's the other option? The other option is you deposit money in an Indian bank. So NRIs, they deposit money in Indian banks in foreign currency, that is called NRI deposits. All right. Now you need to understand this. And this would work for all the discussions. NRI, he deposits money with the bank. Say he deposits $100, 10% rate of interest for a period of say 2 years. This $100, the principal component. If you remember budget, I'll again quote budget over here. If you remember budget, then the loans which we take from other countries, it falls in the capital account. And the interest which we give, if we pay, it falls in the revenue account. Similarly, here also, the principal $100, next year Indian banks pays an interest of $10, further interest of $10 plus $100 back. That's how it would be, right? Now, NRI, when I talk about NRI deposits, it talks only and only about principal. Interest component is discussed here. Alright. Similarly, see this. Indian government takes a loan from US government, say $100 million, 10% rate of interest for a period of say 2 years. NRI deposits money in an Indian bank, say both these transactions are happening in 2025. So for the year 2025, $100 here and $100 million, this would be $100 million would be a sovereign loan, right? So for 2025, for 2025, the $100 will be positive, the $100 million will be positive because there is inflow of dollars, and both these positive would happen in the capital account. Next year what happens? India pays $10 interest, outflow of interest. India pays $10 million interest, outflow of interest. 2027, India pays further $10 as interest, further pays $10 million as interest, also returns the $100 million. 2025, $10 million positive in capital account. 2026, 27, $10 million, $10 million negative in current account. 2027, a negative in capital account of $100 million, but in 2027 itself, we further take a loan of $150 million from US. This outflow of $100 million, this inflow of $150 million, we still have an inflow of $100 million net in 2027. I hope you can understand this. Same goes over here, right? What I'm trying to put over here is that we take loan, it gives a positive in capital account. We pay interest, it gives a negative in the current account. When we return the loan, it shows a negative in the capital account, but the same year, whenever we return the loan, we further take a new loan, which makes a overall net positive in the capital account. So, you see this now. If I talk about loans, India is a poor country, right? A middle income country, I would say lower middle income country, we take loans. So, loans for India's case is positive. NRI deposits is positive, and that's the reason that interest component for India is negative. Alright, now let's come to foreign investments. Now, let me again see my video if it's getting recorded or not, please. Is it getting recorded? Yes, it's getting recorded. Good. Yes. Now, foreign investments. Now, foreign investments are of two types: FDI and FPI. Foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. Now, to understand FDI and FPI, you first need to understand types of companies. There are two types of companies. One is listed company, other is unlisted company. Now, what is a listed company? Listed company is that company which is listed on a stock exchange. Listed on a stock exchange. Example, TCS. What is an unlisted company which is not listed on a stock exchange? Example, Khan Global Studies. Vajiram. You can take any company, right? Now, what is FDI? If there is a foreign investment of 10% or more, if there is a foreign investment of 10% or more in a listed company, it is called FDI. And if the foreign investment is of less than 10% in a listed company, it is called a FPI. Alright. Now, this is the distinction for listed company. What about a unlisted company? Look, in unlisted company, if there is any foreign investment, it is considered as FDI. Means, if a foreign investor purchases anything above 0% in an unlisted company, it is considered as FDI. Means, foreign investor purchases 10% or more in an unlisted company, it is FDI. He purchases less than 10% shares in a unlisted company, it is still FDI. For example, whatever foreign investment has come in any of the startups, it is a FDI. Alright, I'll give you an example. So if suppose Facebook purchases 15% shares in TCS, a listed company, it will be considered as FDI. And if Facebook purchases 5% shares in TCS, it will be considered as FPI. Facebook purchases 15% shares in Khan Global Studies, an unlisted company, it will be FDI. Purchases 5% shares in Khan Global Studies, it will be still called FDI. So any foreign investment in an unlisted company would be considered as FDI. Whether it is FDI or FPI, it will be dependent only on whether the company is, it will be varying if the company is listed or unlisted. Alright, now. So, initially, foreign investment was only of two types: FDI, FPI. Right? Now, suppose this is me and this is Tata Steel. Suppose I want to buy shares of Tata Steel. In that case, will I go to Mumbai, Ratan Tata sir's house and ask, Uncle ji, the share? It won't happen like this. If Ratan Tata has to sell shares of Tata Steel, will he go from road to road, street to street and say, share le lo, share le lo? It won't happen like this. He needs to sell shares, I need to buy shares, right? If you want to buy vegetables, where would you go? Vegetable market. You want to buy fish, where would you go? Fish market. Similarly, if a farmer who he has to sell his vegetables, where would he come? He'll come to vegetable market, and if a fisherman has to sell his fish, he will also come to a fish market. So if I have to buy shares or someone has to sell shares, will come at a place which is called share market. We don't have a word called share market, we have a word called stock market. What is a stock? Stock is a group of shares. So this is a stock market. And stock market would exist on a stock exchange, a place where shares or stocks can be exchanged. Why I am discussing this? To understand FPI or to understand FII and QFI, you will have to understand this. So if I want to buy a share, I can buy a share, but to buy a share, I need to have a demat account. So through demat account, I'll pay the amount and I'll be able to get the shares. Now, to buy shares from stock market, I can do it directly through a demat account. There's one more way through which it is possible. I do not want to do it directly. What I do, I give money to a asset management company, say HDFC, SPI, and they purchase shares on my behalf. They are called mutual funds. So this HDFC, SBI, they'll take money from a lot of people, and then I'm not discussing in mutual funds in detail over here. That's a separate topic of money market, capital market. I'm assuming you know what is mutual fund. So I can purchase shares directly through a demat account. I can also purchase shares through a mutual fund. So when I am purchasing shares directly, I am called a retail investor. And when I am buying shares through a mutual fund, the asset management company or mutual fund, it is called the institutional investor. It is an institutional investor. Institutional investor. Can you understand this? No. This is Tom Cruise. Who is Tom Cruise? He is a foreign HNI. This is a US based mutual fund. US based mutual fund. This US, so if Tom Cruise wants to invest in Indian stock market, he gives his funds to a US based mutual fund and he invests in Indian stock market. So this US based mutual fund, it is basically a foreign institutional investor. Indian mutual fund क्या है? Domestic institutional investor, or I would just say institutional investor. But if a US based, foreign based mutual fund is investing in Indian stock market, it is called a FII. So at the same time, I have one big steel company from Europe called ArcelorMittal. If ArcelorMittal wants to buy a stake in Tata Steel, it will come directly to Tata Steel, will give dollars and will purchase say 20% shares, 15% shares. It will be FDI. This need not come through stock market, right? All startups who got their funds in India, They didn't get money through stock market. Foreign investor is purchasing shares directly from a company, not coming through stock market route, hence called FDI. Now, earlier what would happen if, so now before earlier that, if I want to buy shares of Tata Steel, I have two options. One, I can buy it directly by acting as a retail investor. Other option is I can approach a mutual fund and purchase the shares. Now, earlier, if a foreign HNI wanted to purchase shares from Indian stock market, he could not do it directly. Allowed nahi tha. He had to come through a institutional route only, through a mutual fund route only. So earlier what would happen? Foreign investment was of just two types, FDI and FII. FDI and FII. But later on what happened? Indian government, it allowed foreign HNIs to invest in Indian stock market directly. That is, they just need to fulfill their KYC norms and then they can invest in Indian stock market just like an Indian citizen. And he was then called QFI, Qualified Foreign Investor. So now what's happening? There are three ways through which investment can happen: FDI, FDI or QFI, right? What did the government do? The government clubbed together QFI and FII together, were clubbed together into FPI. So now we have only two distinctions. FDI and FPI, foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. Right now you see this. Suppose you guys purchase shares of Tata Steel and Tata Steel you guys purchase shares of Tata Steel and Tata Steel gets a profit. Would you guys get a part of the profit? You would surely get a part of the profit. Would each one of you get equal part of the profit? No, you would get a profit in proportion to your shareholding. And that is what is called dividend. Dividend is the part of the profit which a shareholder gets in proportion to the shareholding. So most of the people who are watching my demo right now, they would have invested in stock market. किसी ना किसी का ज़ेरोधा में अकाउंट चल रहा होगा और जिस कंपनी में आपने पैसा लगाया, suppose that company is making a profit and the board of directors decide that we will distribute some part of the profit among the shareholders. Then each one of you would be getting some profit depending upon how much shareholding you have, and that would be called a dividend. समझ में आ रही बात? At the same time, suppose you guys are having a office over here, you are an employee. Suppose along with that you also have a business, a part-time business. So whatever profit you get from that shop, that business which you have done, that is completely your profit. Can you understand this? Now you see this. This is a stock market. If Tom Cruise invest in this stock market, it is QFI. If a US based mutual fund, it invests, it is a FII, right? Indian company and a US based company invest directly, it is FDI, right? This is inflow of dollars, this is inflow of dollars, this is inflow of dollars. So when I say foreign investment, I'm just talking about the investment part. I'm not talking about the return on investment. Okay? So FII, QFI, so basically FPI and FDI. We have more inflow of FDI, FPI. Therefore, for India's case, FDI is positive. FPI is also positive. As per earlier discussion, these two are also positive. This is positive, this is positive. But we are still left to discuss about profit and dividend. Now I'll discuss it there. Now when US based company is investing in Indian stock market, in say Tata, ले चलते हैं इसको, यूरोपियन कंपनी है ArcelorMittal investing in Tata Steel. So in this case, ArcelorMittal will get a part of the profit in terms of its shareholding. It will get dividend. Tom Cruise purchases shares, he will also get dividend. US based mutual fund would also get dividend. Can you understand this? But Nike invests in India, Amazon India, Google India, KFC, McD. These are foreign investments in India, but they do not have a domestic partner. Insurance company, ICICI Prudential, life insurance company, right? It is a collaboration, it's a joint venture between ICICI Bank of India and Prudential, an insurance company of UK. So there is a foreign investment in ICICI, there is a foreign investment in insurance sector, but that has a domestic investor also. ICICI Bank domestic investor है, Prudential foreign investor है, foreign investor and domestic investor have come together and joint venture बना ICICI Prudential. उस केस में Prudential would not get complete profit, it would get a part of profit depending upon the shareholding. Prudential को dividend मिलेगा. नाइकी, अमेजॉन, केएफसी, इनका कोई डोमेस्टिक इन्वेस्टर नहीं है, पूरे के पूरे 100% शेयर होल्डिंग इनकी है. दे वुड गेट द कंप्लीट प्रॉफिट. सो नाउ क्वेश्चन अब ये है, डू वी हैव अ मोर इनफ्लो ऑफ फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट्स और वी हैव मोर आउटफ्लो? वी हैव मोर इनफ्लो. एज वी हैव मोर इनफ्लो, देयरफॉर वी हैव अ मोर outflow of profit and dividend. This is negative. Income negative है, ये positive है, ये positive है. Okay, now for capital account, this is positive, this is positive, this is positive. So capital account for India is positive. Let's talk about current account. Balance of invisibles is negative. Services is positive, income is negative, transfers is positive, but these two positives are more than this negative. Balance of invisibles is positive. But the negative of balance of visibles is more than the positive of balance of invisibles. Hence, current account for India's case is negative. Hence, India has current account deficit. India has current account deficit. All right. And if I talk about capital account, for capital account, India has capital account surplus. There we have a deficit. Here we have, look, this deficit is as of the current time. It's quite possible after 20-30 years we become a big manufacturing country. In that case, even current account may become positive. We start exporting goods. But as of now, current status, ये deficit है, ये surplus है. So what about BOP? No. The deficit of current account is less than the surplus of capital account. Therefore, in India's case, BOP is positive and BOP is surplus. Is it okay? So I hope you have understood what exactly is BOP, what exactly are the components of balance of payments. The components are current account, capital account. Current account we have, let me just give a brief revision. Current account consists of balance of visibles, balance of invisibles. Balance of visibles consists of goods, invisibles consist of services, income and transfers. Services is positive, trade is negative, balance of trade and services is negative, income is negative because outflow of profit, dividend and interest. There's inflow of remittance, gift, donation, hence this is positive. Services positive, transfers positive, income is negative, but total it is positive. The NRI deposits you have understood, loans, sovereign loans, ECB, all of them are positive. Capital account is positive. India has BOP surplus as of now because India's current account deficit is less than capital account surplus, or I can say India's capital account surplus finances India's current account deficit. Hence, India has a BOP surplus. I hope that clears a lot of things. BOP chapter is a huge chapter. It consists of multiple other topics like what are different type of exchange rates, fixed exchange rate, floating exchange rate, managed floating exchange rate, concepts like masala bonds, concept like nominal interest, nominal exchange rate, real exchange rate, near real. It's a long chapter of 10 hours, but for this discussion purposes, I have kept my discussion to just 1 hour, where I'm discussing with you what exactly is balance of payments. All right, thanks.